Good morning, I'm Gretchen Hall. It is a Wednesday, the 21st day of May, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. Tensions rise as former palace officials trade barbs with Salvador Panelo urging Harry Roque to return to the Philippines and face human trafficking charges. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice has started the process for an Interpol red notice against Roque, confirmed by Justice Undersecretary Nicolas T. As EDSA undergoes rehabilitation, no contact apprehension or NCAP takes effect temporarily on major roads, drawing varied opinions from motorists. Let's discuss the matter later in the program. And the Philippine National Police will step up its crackdown on street-level drug offenders in line with President Bongbong Marcos's expanded anti-drug campaign. But authorities assure that the effort will avoid violent tactics seen in Oplan Tokhang. Straight on to our top story, a word war erupts between former palace officials as Salvador Panelo urges Harry Roque to return to the Philippines and face human trafficking charges. Here is the report.
Former Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo urged former palace spokesperson Attorney Harry Roque to return to the Philippines and face the human trafficking case filed against him. Panelo asserted that Roque, as a lawyer, should understand that the burden of proof lies with the government.
Meron kang warrant of arrest. Ngayon, abogado ka. Alam mo naman na the burden of proof on cases filed against you is on the government. If it is true what you're saying, na you're innocent, o di ang lakas ng chance mo. Ang magiging problema mo dyan, kung mananatili ka sa Hague, ang perception ng tao, tama man o mali, natatakot ka kasi guilty ka.
In response, Roque dismissed Panelo's comments, calling them a display of gross ignorance about the nature of the system. Roque said he would not entertain the comments of someone who lacks understanding of the asylum process.
Well, I think that's gross ignorance of what asylum is, no? So I will not even bother to answer observation from someone who's completely ignorant about the nature of asylum.
Meanwhile, the Department of Justice has initiated a request for an Interpol red notice against Roque. Justice Undersecretary Nicolas T. confirmed that the process is underway.
We've already triggered the process to request for a red notice from the Interpol, and hopefully, if it's granted to us, it will come out, and we'll see how it goes. So, if upon implementation, if the government of the Netherlands will allow the application of the principle of non-refoulement.
The DOJ also seeks to cancel Roque's passport to further hinder any attempts to evade prosecution. A red notice is a request issued by Interpol to locate and provisionally arrest a person pending extradition, surrender, or similar legal action. It is not an international arrest warrant, but it serves as an alert to law enforcement agencies in all Interpol member countries that the individual is wanted by a national jurisdiction.
Those in the Duterte circle welcome President Bongbong Marcos's openness to reconciliation, but they say the administration needs to do something first. Mobile journalist Arles de los Santos with the details.
Bring Digong back to the Philippines. Former Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Sal Panelo says there could only be reconciliation between President Bongbong Marcos and the Duterte family if his administration would find ways to bring former President Rodrigo Duterte back home.
Kung yan ay matapat ang kanyang layunin na magipagkasundo na para maging mapayapa na tayo at tugunan niya na ang malawak na suliraning umabagabag sa damdamin ng taong bayan, kailangan unang-una ibalik niya muna ang Presidente Duterte dito sa ating bansa. Sapagkat klarong-klaro naman na iligal ang ginawa ng mga tao niya.
Former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque shares Panelo's sentiment, though his reaction was less cordial and diplomatic.
I will allow VP Sara to address that. Pero kung tatanungin mo kami, ang sagot ay, nek-nek mo, pagtapos mong kidnapin si Tatay Digong, makipagbati ka, nakawin mo uli dito si Tatay Digong, iuwi mo. Baka po pwede pa magkasundo muli. Otherwise, go jump into the lake.
Personal riffs aside, Senate President Francis Escudero lauded President Marcos's openness to reach out to the Dutertes. Escudero says the country's leaders cannot afford to be consumed by politics when so many of the Filipino people are struggling to make ends meet. Senator Jinggoy Estrada also praised the president's intent to rise above the political bickering. For his part, Senator Bato de la Rosa said that he is just as open as the president in extending a hand of reconciliation. De la Rosa only hopes that the president would not betray his own words as he allegedly did when he allowed the International Criminal Court to arrest Digong.
As I have said, wala naman sigurong gustong forever mag-aaway. Lahat naman tayo ay gustong tumahimik tayo at mamuhay ng matiwasay at makafocus sa kabutihan ng ating bansa. Pero sa lalim ng sugat na in-inflict nila sa amin, I think kailangan talaga ng extreme sincerity. Extreme sincerity, hindi yung pahapyaw. Hindi yung pahapyaw dahil as I've said, meron na kami may experience sa kanya. Talagang na-experience namin. At kayo mismo, naka-experience ng you witness for yourself.
Mobile Journal Arles de los Santos. We are One News.
President Bongbong Marcos says the Philippines will not stand for any disrespect of its sovereignty. Speaking at the Philippine Navy's 127th anniversary in Subic, Zambales on Tuesday, Marcos affirmed that the country will continue to safeguard its maritime zones and entitlements in accordance with international law.
We will never tolerate any act of disrespect against our sovereignty. Wala tayong isusuko, wala tayong papapabayaan.
The chief executive also praised the country's naval forces for their resilience amid regional disputes. He said they act as peacekeepers in land and sea who are upholding our nation's maritime entitlements with dignity and with courage.
Habang kayo ay magdamag na nagbabantay sa laot, sa mga baybayin ng ating bansa, nananatiling panatag ang loob ng bawat Pilipino.
Don't go away. We'll be back with more stories right after a short break. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho, and here at Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. Erwin Tulfo has secured a Senate seat after placing fourth with over 17 million votes. In his proclamation speech, Tulfo committed himself to uniting and not further dividing the nation. He ran under President Bongbong Marcos's Alianza para sa Bagong Pilipinas. He has served as ACT-CIS representative and as former Social Welfare Secretary. Once seated this coming June 30, he will join his brother, Senator Raffy Tulfo, in the upper chamber. And to talk to us about his legislative priorities and vision for the nation, we have on the show Senator-elect Erwin Tulfo joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Senator. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Thank you for inviting me, Ms. Gretchen.
Okay, Senator, congratulations. You are officially coming in at number 4. I know we had you on the show on Election Day, fresh after the results were coming out. You said uupo po kayo para aralin kung ano nangyari dito sa halalan, ano? Because, of course, the surveys said or predicted that you'd be number 1 or number 2, and then your brother would also be part of the top 12. What have your realizations been since then about the midterm elections?
Well, it doesn't matter anymore, Ms. Gretchen, kasi pag in-introduce ka naman sa Senate, di naman sabihin na number 4 is senator, number 2, number 1. You will just be addressed yung title mo, senator, and then last name mo, Tulfo. So, hindi na importante kung number 1, number 2, number 3 ka. Para sa akin, siguro, I'll just start working, Ms. Gretchen, on the very first day. I believe that will be around July 1.
When it comes to your brother, nakausap niyo na po ba yung mga political advisors po ninyo? Tingin niyo talagang he took a hit because may dalawang Tulfo na pagpipilian sa balota, or is there something else that we're seeing here?
Could be. May nakausap ako na ilang political science professors na kaibigan natin, and they're saying Parang first time kasi na magkakaroon ng three tulfos o ng isang pamilya na tatlong magkakapatid sa Senate. Wala pa raw nangyayaring gano'n. Dalawa meron. So parang hindi pa ready ang tao. And yun na nga, people have spoken. Gusto lang nila na isa lang talaga o dalawa lang na magkapatid dyan sa Senado o magkamag-anak, Ms. Gretchen.
Only 6 Alianza bets have entered the Magic 12. What do you think went wrong in the campaign? I mean, bakit po kaya ang daming nalaglag si Abby Binay, Bong Revilla, Benhur Abalos, Manny Pacquiao, Francis Tolentino? Where did the administration, where did they go wrong?
I saw the statement of Congressman Toby Tiangco. Yung aming campaign manager is blaming it doon sa sa impeachment. Pero that's part of it. Pero marami kasing factors, Ms. Gretchen. The way I look at it personally, yung pag-split na lang kaagad ng unit team ni BBM at saka ni VP Sara, nahati yun kasi merong 'di ba 30 million. Yun doon ang pinag-usapan namin ng mga kaibigan ko na sa political science professors. Na nahati kaagad yung 30 million ni BBM, yung 15 napunta kay Sara, yung 15 napunta sa administration, tapos yung 15, di ba, remember nung election si VP Lenny, meron din siyang 15 million na nakuha niya. So, nag-split, kaya gano'n ang nangyari, hindi talaga 100% na 10 or 11 from Alianza na mananalo. So, tingin ko, nahati nga talaga yung grupo ng Duterte supporters, sinuportahan yung 5 ng Duterte and then yung 6 naman sa administrasyon at yung 2 doon nga sa what do you call this, the liberal kila Senator Bam at saka Senator Kiko.
Ano po yung mas matimbang sa tingin po ninyo? Ito pong impeachment po ba o yung pagka-aresto ng dating Pangulo?
Parang pareho nagsama-sama na Ms. Gretchen yung pagka-aresto and then yung impeachment and then it all started sa paghihiwalay, di ba? Nahati Ms. Gretchen yung unit team kasi may support si Sara. Sabi, first time na ganun kalaki nakuha ng isang Pangulo because nga nagsama yung Duterte supporters tapos yung BBM supporters kaya nakuha sila ng 30. Nag-split sila. So, yun ang nangyari. Maraming factors actually, Ms. Gretchen. Hindi lang yung impeachment, hindi lang yung pagka-aresto sa Pangulo. Yung paghihiwalay kaagad ng dalawang grupo is already a factor. Naramdaman ko na
But there's also criticism over the messaging of the administration slate, that it was not clear from the get-go what the Alianza was standing for, what united the candidates under that slate. Di raw naging malinaw, ano? How could they have improved on the messaging, you think?
Anong napansin ko lang, Ms. Gretchen, I think siguro yung before every campaign siguro sortie, dapat kinakausap muna. Ang problema, nakikita-kita na lang kami sa isang sortie. Dapat kung ako natanungin mo, yung suggestion ko is mag-usap muna tayo, parang briefing. Okay, anong sasabihin natin dito? Dapat isang music lang tayo, isang tugtog, isang sayaw ang sasabihin natin. Kaso mo, lagi yung performance, yung ginawa ng ganito, yung ginawa ng ganito. May mga kasama tayo na sa alyansa na hindi pa naman naging senador. Yung mga dating senador siguro. So parang kulang sa briefing. Yun lang yung napansin ko doon na para isang music tayo. We're in one page, before every sortie. Kasi anong nangyayari, pupunta tayo ng Pangasinan. So nagkikita-kita lang sa Pangasinan. Actually, hindi kami talaga nag-meet. Nag-meet na lang kami few hours before the sortie or yung rally, Ms. Gretchen.
It seems to be alliances of convenience. Parang hindi po talaga naging alyansa at tagpi-tagpi yung relationship. Bakit po kaya si Senator Lito Lapid lang nagpunta dun sa Thanksgiving?
Kasi very short notice na Ms. Gretchen Kahit ako hindi ako nakapunta kasi Siyempre, proclamation yon, kasama mo family mo, magdi-dinner. Very short notice ang nangyari doon. Kagaya ko na meron akong dinner with my family. Tapos napunta kami sa ang layo sa Mandaluyong. Kita mo yung traffic, masyadong malayo. Lahat kami nagtatanungan, sila Senator Soto, Senator Ping, sabi niya may appointment ako, sabi ko pupunta ka ba? Kasi very short notice. Proclamation bukas ngayong gabi. Siyempre, yung ibang mga miyembro ng alyansa, nakapag-set na, may mga dinner sila with friends, may mga victory party sila. Ako naman, I had dinner with my family, yung nasa video, yung nakikita natin ngayon. I had dinner with them, my own family.
It does show that the alliance is porous. Dahil ganun nga po, no? Parang hindi nagkikita-kita. Baka dapat may GC po kayo.
Meron naman actually nag-inform si Congressman Tiangco pag may mga activities o dito tayo susunod, dito tayo pupunta, doon lang. Pero yung actually yung parang time on target kasi nga yung safety ng Pangulo, pupunta ang Pangulo, hindi ka agad nasasabi na dito tayo pupunta, mag-prepare kayo o ito masasabihin natin, one page tayo. Pero ang alam ko, the Alyansa is like dapat yung messaging namin is like, yun naman sinasabi namin in support of the President, yung mga plans and programs sa Pangulo so that we can move forward.
Okay, Senator, you called for unity in your proclamation speech, but the last time we heard the word unity, it didn't work. It faltered. The Marcos Duterte tandem broke apart. Why are we to believe that this time around, this is actually possible? Given ang dami pong mga nangyari na, ito nga po, sabi nga po kanina ni Harry Roque, ni Attorney Salvador Panelo, na posible lang yung pagbati natin kung ibabalik mo ang dating presidente dito sa Pilipinas. I mean, ang dami na pong napagdaanan. Why do you think unity is possible?
It has to start somewhere, Ms. Gretchen. And then, nung araw ng proclamation, I reached out, I talked to Senator Bongo, and then sabi ko, boss, tulong ako kung ano man pwede para sa grupo nyo, para may maipapasa tayo ng mga batas para sa taong bayan. I talked to Senator Bato and same thing with Senator Bam and even Senator Marcoleta. Lahat naman sila sang-ayon and then they agree with me na walang patutunguhan, Ms. Gretchen, kung hiwa-hiwalay, di ba? Yung isa nasa kaliwa, yung isa sa kanan. Alam naman natin na sa Senate and Congress numbers game, pag magpapasa ka ng batas, kailangan may mga kakampi ka. Kung lagi may kontra, wala talagang patutunguhan. Pati sila yung PDP na grupo, sang-ayon sila willing to unite. Kahit lang dito na lang sa Senate muna mag-umpisa yung grupo na ito na para mag-usap, para umusad yung ating bayan, yung mga batas, panukalang batas, maipasa, Ms. Gretchen. Kasi that's the reason why people are sick and tired sa mga pangako, din walang nangyayari kasi may mga kumukontra lagi. Kailangan siguro talaga, the only way to be successful and pass a law is united dapat lahat, everybody, dyan sa Senate.
To put the interests of the public before politics. I guess that was also the message of the President. Maugong po yung usap-usapan dito sa pagpapalit ng liderato sa Senado. Kayo po ba ay nakausap na? May kumausap na po sa inyo tungkol dyan?
Mausap na sa akin yung brother ko si Rafi ng gusta. Tapos binigyan ako ng briefing na sinasabi ni Sen. Rafi na ganito ang gagawin. Sabi ko, paano yung offices, yung assignment. Sabi niya, ay iraraffle yan. Sabi ko, paano yung mga committee. Sabi niya, gano'n din seniority, kung sinong senior dyan, kung sinong mga nakaupo. Mariretain sa kanya yung ika-nga committee.
Ibig sabihin po ba kayo ay medyo mas nasa gitna dito sa buong Senado? Do you see yourself as more of a centrist figure?
Ang gusto lang natin, Ms. Gretchen, we have to start working with everybody from the PDP, from the Liberal, from yung mga independent. Kasi if we start going yung kanya-kanya, walang patutunguhan, Ms. Gretchen. Ang gusto ko na focus natin ngayon is makagawa tayo ng batas na everybody is looking forward. Kagaya ngayon, yung problem natin, na ipangako ng lahat, PDP man, alyansa man, ang sinasabi, kailangan i-resolve yung problema sa pagkain, mahal na bilihin ng pagkain, rice, yung sinisigaw ng mga kababayan natin, tapos healthcare. Siguro doon tayo mag-uumpisa, Ms. Gretchen.
Speaking of, what would be your priority legislative bills coming in to the Senate? You emphasized the need to focus on the middle class, but you've also talked about the inefficiencies at PhilHealth. So ano po yung magiging prioridad po natin?
Well, for one, naipangako ng lahat yung murang bigas. Kasi ngayon mura pa, may mabibili ka sa market na 30, 29, etc. Pero pagkatapos ng anihan, Ms. Gretchen, by July, August, September, tataas na ulit yan. Baka wala na makikita sa palengke. I think we need to review the rice tarification law. Kasi dito sa rice tarification law, ito yung batas na pumigil, inalisan ng kapangyarihan ng NFA na magbenta ng bigas sa mga palengke. Kaya wala ka na nakikita ang NFA rice ngayon. So kailangan natin i-review yan. Ano ba ang problema? Karapat dapat ba ang ibigay? Kasi ang issue daw dyan, naging korupsyon, matindi ang korupsyon. Well, nandiyan naman yung ombudsman, trabaho nila. Kasi why will you punish yung taong bayan dahil yung isang agency nagnanakaw, parusahan mo? So walang maibiling murang bigas yung mga kababayan natin. Pangalawa, yung sa PhilHealth, Ms. Gretchen, yung ipapile ko na bill na kasi ngayon, parang limited lang na 30% ang sasagutin lang sa hospital bills mo. Pero depende pa sa sakit. Paano yung nanay? Paano yung pregnant woman pag nanganak? Hindi sinasagot yun ng PhilHealth. Yung pagpapaanak, hindi sinasagot yan. Pangalawa, pag walang pera, hindi tatanggap. Itatanong ka agad ng hospital pag private. Meron po pa kayong anong gagamitin nyo? Pang down para sa hospital? Dapat yung card na mismo pwede nang tanggapin nyo sa mga private hospitals. Ito po, ang garantor ko po ay ang gobyerno po magbabayad ng 30% ng bill. Hindi po nagagamit ho yun parang useless. Kaya gagawa tayo ng panukalan ng batas na with that card, you're entitled, pwede ka magpagamot sa anumang pagamutan. Dapat at sasagutin ng gobyerno ang 30% ng hospital bill mo. Isa yan. Isa pa, Ms. Gretchen, yung standardization, salary standardization ng mga barangay leaders natin. Walang mga sweldo yan puro allowances. Iba yung sweldo ng mga barangay leaders sa Metro Manila kumpara doon sa mga 6-class municipalities. Alam mo ba, Ms. Gretchen, may mga barangay chairman na sumasahod na ng 2,000. Pare-pareho lang naman yung bilihin sa Bukid ka sa Metro Manila. Kasi Metro Manila, 20,000 at least ang sweldo ng mga barangay chairman. Pero pag nasa 6-class municipalities ka, nasa 2,500 lang o 2,000. Kita mo yung disparity noon. So kailangan natin i-standardize. At saka hahanapan natin ng pondo na bigyan natin sila ng pondo in the national government na to shoulder na mag-allocate ng budget para sa kanila. Ilan lamang yan, Ms. Gretchen. Meron pa dyan yung review, yung National Land Use Act. I think it's really high time na kailangan natin ipasa na yung National Land Use Act dahil sinisigaw na yan kahit mga kasamahan ko sa Kongreso, sa Senado, gusto na lang ipasa yung National Land Use Act, Ms. Gretchen.
Okay, Senator, ang pangalan nyo rin po ay naririnig pag pinag-uusapan natin ang ayuda. Kayo po ay supporter nung AIX, pati na rin itong yung AKAP. Ano pong pananaw po ninyo dito? Kasi meron din po nagsasabi na ang ayuda nagiging dependent ang mga Pilipino dito at parang nagiging beholden sila sa mga politiko. Imbis na tumayo sa sariling paa, umaasa na lamang sila. What are your thoughts on that?
Nag-DSWD ako, Secretary, Ms. Gretchen, so nakita ko yung need. Yung AIX dapat, pag ang tawag kasi dyan, yung Assistance for Individual in Crisis Situation. In crisis, hindi yung pag-eleksyon, ibibigay mo yung AIX. Yung AKAP naman, ayuda para sa Kapos ang Kita program. Yes, isa ako sa mga nakapag-isip niyan. Kasi, pag titignan mo yung AIX, Ms. Gretchen, para sa mga mahihirap at saka in crisis. Pero paano naman yung mga may trabaho? They're not considered poorest of the poor. Wala rin sila sa listahan ng 4Ps, pero may trabaho sila. Kaya ang tingin ng gobyerno, okay naman kayo, may trabaho, pero look at them, minimum wage. Yung mga fast food crew, yung mga sales clerks sa mga department stores, do you think yung sweldo nila, pagkakasya nila, hindi nila kailangan ng tulong? Kailangan din nila ng tulong, Ms. Gretchen, na pambayad sa kuryente, pambili ng bigas, yun ang sinasabi natin. Kaya nga, may akap, pero mukhang hindi na gasto ng tama, na abuso, na abuse. Kaya nga, pag-upo natin, isa sa mga sisilipin natin, hopefully, kung si Madam Amy ang magiging chairman, magva-vice chair ako sa kanya, we share the same sentiment na mukhang naabuso. Pangalawa, dapat talagang hindi politiko ang hahawak ng mga yan. Dapat talagang DSWD, dapat pwede lang namin tawagan ng DSWD. Sec, baka pwede, ito, may sunog dito, kailangan dito sa distrito ko, or Sec, may baha doon, kailangan ng tulong. Dapat ganun lang, hindi yung ang DSWD pa rin dapat ang may hawak at ang magde-decide, Ms. Gretchen.
Okay, on a final note, ang pamilya niyo po ay nakakatanggap din ng kritisismo dahil meron na po tayong 2 tulfo sa Senado, meron na po tayo sa Kongreso, si Ralph, si Jocelyn. Will you support an anti-political dynasty bill? Or ano pong thoughts niyo on that?
Senator Ping, during the campaigns, tinanong din kami. Tapos sabi ni Senator Ping, yes, pag-upo ko, magpa-file ako ng anti-political dynasty bill. And then, tinanong ako kung isusupport ko. Sabi ko, definitely, pag batas na yun, bakit di natin susuportahan? Eh ako mismo, sabi ko, Ms. Gretchen, bababa ako and I will convince my sister-in-law, I will convince my nephew, baba na tayo because there's a law. Kaya naman nagkasabay-sabay, kaya naman ako tumakbo din sa Senate. Eh gusto ko lamang siguro iparamdam sa taong bayan yung Tulfo brand of public service, yung ORA mismo. Tulfo brand of justice na today ibibigay yung hustisya na hinahanap mo. Yun lang. Pero kung meron na tayong law, Ms. Gretchen, I will support. I will sign. Magko-co-author pa nga ako pag nag-file. I was telling Senator Ping, boss, pag nanalo tayo, gawin mo akong co-author ng anti-dynasty bill na yan. I will really support that. Kasi hindi kami pinakamagaling na tao, Ms. Gretchen. Hindi rin kami pinakamabait na tao. Maraming Pilipino na gustong magsilbi. So, let's give them a chance, di ba? Hindi lang po Tulfo ang pamilya dito sa Pilipinas. Marami din. So, ibigay na natin sa kanila. Pag may batas na ho dyan, bababa po ako, mark my word, I will convince my sister-in-law, I will convince my nephew sa Congress na baba na tayo. Hayaan natin isang Tulfo lang dyan, hayaan natin si Senator Raffy na muna dyan kasi may batas na.
Okay. Bilang panghuli, super huli na po, no? Can you confirm that Rodante Marcoleta is in the running for Senate President?
Wala pa naman kukontak sa akin. May nabasa lang ako sa Facebook, nakalagay doon, Senator Soto, and then Rodante Marcoleta, and then si Chis Escudero nga. Pero wala pa kumakausap sa akin. Sabi ko nga sa iyo, Ms. Gretchen, ang kumausap lamang sa akin ay yung brother ko, si Rafi, yung paano yung assignment ng office, and then yung mga committee. Pero other than that, yung kung sino magiging Senate President, wala pa naman kumakausap. Pag may nakarating sa iyo, kung sino ka makausap, Ms. Gretchen, text mo ako para lapitan ko. Sabi ko, hoy, kausapin mo rin naman ako. By boto rin ako.
Okay, maraming salamat sa inyo. Congratulations again at best of luck to the 6 years ahead. We have Senator-elect Erwin Tulfo joining us on Morning Matters today.
Thank you, Ms. Gretchen. Thank you.
Don't go away. More matters to discuss right after the break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The No Contact Apprehension, or NCAP, temporarily takes effect along major roads as EDSA undergoes rehabilitation. More in this report.
The Supreme Court has partially lifted a temporary restraining order on the No Contact Apprehension Policy, or NCAP. This is in response to the urgent motion filed by the MMDA and the Solicitor General in anticipation of the heavy traffic that will be caused by the EDSA rehabilitation project.
Kung may NCAP na yung mga violators, hindi na namin kailangan parahin, magtalo, issuehan physically ng ticket, na habang ginagawa yon ay nakakaabala pa sa traffic.
But the High Tribunal said NCAP can only be implemented by the MMDA in major thoroughfares like EDSA and C5. NCAP ordinances by local government units are still unauthorized. Recall that the High Court imposed the TRO on NCAP after 3 petitions insisted that it violated the Data Privacy Act and Land Transportation and Traffic Code. The petitioners also argued that the policy burdens operators and does not penalize rail traffic violators who are often the drivers. Motorists are divided on the matter.
Pwede, mas safe. Mas safe? Oo. Tsaka use caution na rin sa mga sa mga enforcer na Mas maganda kung direkta na sa government.
Sa palagay ko mas maganda po kung hindi na ibabalik yung NCAP. Siguro mas maganda kung personal na lang. Personal na lang na titikitan.
Let's discuss that further with MMDA Chairman Romando Artes, who joins us on Morning Matters today. Magandang umaga po.
Magandang umaga sa iyo, Gretchen, at sa inyong taga-subaybay.
Okay, Chairman, kayo po ay naghain ng urgent motion before the Supreme Court to lift the TRO. Ano po ang mga dahilan?
Well, una-una po, sinabi po namin sa urgent motion na pinal natin sa Office Suprema through our lawyer, Office of the Solicitor General, na kailangan po namin yung NCAP, lalong-lalo na po pag nag-start yung rehabilitation ng EDSA. Dahil instead po na physical apprehension, napaparahin pa, nag-issue ng ticket, makakadagdag po kasi yan sa pagsikip ng daloy ng traffic, lalong-lalo na po during rehab na EDSA. Pangalawa po, lahat naman po halos ng concerns ng petitioners ay na-address po natin through our single ticketing system. Na-address po dyan yung sinasabi po nilang exorbitant fees dahil na-standardize na po namin yung penalties for 20 common violations. At the same time, yung pong contest mechanism under our guidelines po, pinasimple po natin through online, pwede po nila i-contest kung sa kaling tingin nila na mali yung panghuli namin. At pag dinesisyonan po namin yan, kinonfirm namin na tama yung paghuli, ay pwede pong i-request sa amin yung CCTV footage para po makita nila whether or not tama talaga. And yung pong paggamit namin ng AI sa aming mga cameras, hindi po automatic na pag hinuli po ng AI ay i-issuean na po namin ng citation ticket. Yan po ay i-review po ng mga existing personnel po natin kung tama po yung huli ng AI para po, tsaka lamang po may i-issuean ng citation ticket.
Okay. Chairman, ano po yung napansin po ninyong pagbabago nung nawala yung no contact apprehension sa behavior ng mga driver?
Well, tuloy-tuloy po yung pag-monitor namin ng mga violations. Immediately after po na matigil yung or na-suspend yung implementation ng NCAP, lumobo po yung violation. I think, if I recall it right, from less than 10,000, umabot po ng 40,000 plus per month yung pong violation. This only shows na pag wala pong nakikitang enforcer sa daan, malakas po ang loob at nawawala po yung disiplina ng mga motorista at nagbabiolate po sila. So with the NCAP na bumalik, I think magiging mas maingat po sila at iiwas po sila mag-violate knowing na may nakatingin sa kanila na kahit wala pong enforcer ay pwede pong mahuli yung kanilang violation.
Oo, pero Chairman, ano po kaya yung naging basehan natin dun sa 40,000 violations? Kung hindi po natin nahuli yung mga nagva-violate?
Well, minonitor pa rin po namin through our CCTV yung mga violations po. So, na-capture po namin yon yung violations na yun. It's just that hindi namin sila natikitan dahil nga po naka-TRO kami.
Okay. Ito po ay partial lifting lamang. Ano po yung sakop ng partial lifting na ito?
Well, kaya lang po siguro sinabing partial lifting dahil marami po kami kasama dyan, particularly yung mga LGUs. Kaya po sinabi sigurong partial lifting dahil MMDA NCAP lamang po ang nilift yung TRO. Pero insofar as the declaration naman po ng Supreme Court is concerned, yung pong mga major thoroughfares na nasasakupan po namin, na nasa under po ng aming jurisdiction ng MMDA, ay pinapayagan na po yung implementation ng NCAP.
Okay. Tama po ba na sa EDSA at C5 lamang na nagbabalik yung NCAP?
Hindi po, kasi ginamit lamang naman po na example yon na yung major thoroughfares lamang such as EDSA and C5. So, hindi naman po niyan ini-exclude yung iba pa po naming karsada na under our jurisdiction tulad po ng Commonwealth, Ortigas, Ross Boulevard, among others po.
Hindi naman po sa umiiwas kami, pero pwede mong malaman yung mga daan kung saan nagbabalik itong NCAP.
Well, technically, yung lahat po ng major roads, meron po kasing 7 major roads na nasa jurisdiction natin na covered po niyan.
Katulad po ng?
Yun po, C5, EDSA, Ortigas, Commonwealth, Ross Boulevard, C6, I think, 7 po yan yung major roads po na under our jurisdiction.
Para rin po sa kaalaman no, ng ating mga motorists, syempre, no, napakahalaga po niyan. But what happens now to the LGUs? Ano po ang nakabinbin pa rin po ang kaso?
I cannot speak on behalf po ng mga LGUs, pero I think patuloy pa rin po yung TRO sa kanila. So, nakapindin pa rin po yung kaso. Iba naman po yung sa part ng MMDA. Tuloy pa rin po yung kaso niyan. It's just that nawala na po yung pagpigil sa amin na i-implement siya pending yung resolution po ng kaso.
Okay. You mentioned a while ago yung single ticketing system ay naayos nyo na po. Ito po ba yung nasa app? May app po ba kayo dyan o website kung saan makikita po yung mga tickets na nakukuha po ng mga dito nahuhuli sa NCAP?
I-update lamang po namin. Meron po kami kasing app kung saan itatype nyo lang po yung plate number. Lalabas po yung kung may huli ka. Ang pangalan po nun may huli ka na app. So, i-upgrade lamang po namin yan para po anytime na kung gusto nyo malaman whether or not nahuli ka ng NCAP ay madali nyo pong makita. Pero nakipag-ugnayan din po kami sa LTO, particularly kay Sec. Pincison and kay Sec. Ligor Mendoza para po makuha namin yung mga data ng mas malawak tulad po ng cellphone para po pag nahuli namin, pwede na namin i-text yung registered owner. Although may challenge po dyan kasi marami pong mga sasakyan daw na hindi kagad na iilipat yung deed of sale, yung registration ng sasakyan. At yung daw po hindi nag-update ng kanilang record. So, i-discuss po namin yan sa DOTR and LTO para po
and how to deal with that.
Yes.
That's actually one of the criticisms with this NCAP program na yung nakakasuhan o nabibigyan ng ticket rather ay yung may-ari ng sasakyan o yung registered owner but not necessarily the driver. But apart from that, how long should we expect the process to be kapag kayo po ay nahuli nitong NCAP system? Paano po yung daloy ng proseso na yon, no? Kasi meron din po nagsasabi na parang nagpapatong-patong yung fines kapag hindi mo nabayaran kaagad.
Well, unang-una, yung sa may-ari po ng sasakyan, meron po kaming contest mechanism. Kailangan lang po i-ano nila under oath na hindi po sila yung nagmamaneho. At the same time, may admission po ng driver na siya ang nagmamaneho Kasi po mahirap naman po kung ituturo lang ng may-ari ng sasakyan na si ganito po yung nagdi-drive. Kailangan po may admission ng driver na talagang siya. And admitting na siya dapat yung i-penalize. So, kung wala po yan, wala po kaming choice kung hindi i-charge doon po sa sasakyan yung penalty for the violation. And hindi niya po mai-rehistro or ma-renew yung rehistro hanggat hindi po nababayaran itong penalty na ito. So, kaya nga po kami, may sinasabi niyo nagpapatong-patong before malaman ng may-ari na yung kanya po palang driver ay marami ng violation. Meron nga po kami i-update lang po namin yung app namin kung saan pwede po nilang i-check periodically yung kanilang mga sasakyan kung may nahuli po or may violation.
Even the fines are there in the app.
Siguro pa, magandang suggestion niya na isama po namin na kung ito po yung violation, kung ano yung klase ng violation at kung ano po yung penalty imposed for that violation.
Okay, maraming salamat po sa pagpapaliwanag nitong pagbabalik ng no contact apprehension. We have MMDA Chairman Romando Artes joining us on the show.
Salamat.
Stay tuned. The Morning Matters will be back right after a short break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. At this point, let's talk to Amitabh Behar. We have the Executive Director of Oxfam International joining us this morning on Morning Matters. Mr. Behar is a prominent global voice on inequality, democratic rights, and economic injustice. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
Hey, Amitabh, I know you did a report on global oligarchies, but before we get into that, tell us more about Oxfam and the work that you do globally and here in the Philippines.
So, Oxfam works in 80 countries, and I would broadly categorize our work in 3 buckets. One is doing research, campaigning on issues of inequality for economic justice. The second is developmental work, which is on ground working with communities, with partners, and that ranges from gender justice to livelihoods to climate justice. And the third part is humanitarian relief. So whether it's the conflict zone, whether it's Yemen, whether it's the DRC, we are pretty much in most of the conflict zones providing safe drinking water, sanitation, at times food. So it's a fairly broad portfolio for us.
How are you present in the Philippines?
I'm at the moment here with Oxfam Philippines to work with their strategy for the coming few years.
Okay. Let's talk about this study on global oligarchies. It says that we are no longer in an age of mere inequality. We are living under global oligarchies. What do we know?
If you see the Trump presidency, it is pretty much the jewel in the crown for global oligarchies. You have a billionaire president backed by the richest man in the world. So that's what we are seeing. But this comes on the back of the massive inequality crisis that the world is seeing. Last year, a report said that the 5 top billionaires doubled their wealth since COVID, where 60% of the global population, that's 5 billion people, actually became poorer. This year, you still have almost 900 million people sleeping hungry. They don't get 3 square meals, whereas the billionaires have added $3 trillion to their wealth. So what you're seeing is essentially growing inequalities. The economic benefits accrue absolutely at the top level, and majority of the people don't get even enough resources to keep with the inflation. And what you're now seeing is that these top billionaires are also meddling with politics, and it's pretty much they're controlling governments. And once you have billionaires controlling governments, people start losing faith in democracy, in the idea of liberal governments, and that's where you start seeing the assertion of right wing.
We talked about 5 billionaires. Is there a concentration of that wealth in a certain region.
It is. As in, if you look at the billionaires, there are certain pockets where there is concentration. United States is where you have the maximum number of billionaires. But what is also important, in fact, this year's report of Oxfam says that there's continuing colonialism. So we call it the modern day colonialism. And last year, this is absolutely startling and shocking figure. For every hour, $30 million were being extracted from the global south, going to the global north, essentially to that top 1%. And that colonialism, imperialism continues.
And how is that happening, modern day colonialism?
It happens in multiple ways, from just the debt trap that the countries are in to just the strength of the US dollar. As in, you look at the global markets, they're still running on the US dollar, whereas in the south, you have weaker currency. So the trading grammar, the terms of trade are also tilted in favor of the north, that you're essentially seeing a continuing flow of resources from the south, pretty much by backbreaking work of millions and millions of people in the south.
When you talk about the global north, these are, of course, the countries that are into debt lending to the global south.
Absolutely. As in, now the debt crisis is so massive that there are around 100 countries which are actually spending almost 50% of their budgets in debt repayment. Whereas what they need at the moment is more doctors, more nurses, more teachers, but they're cutting down on public services and essentially doing debt reservicing.
You mentioned the presidency of Donald Trump. Some say that he is trying to address inequalities in his own country, trying to get back to jobs to America instead of outsourcing to China, to other countries over in Asia. There are some who are saying he's trying to rebalance the markets. What do you say to that?
Would love to see that data. Would love to see some evidence, because the actions clearly demonstrate that essentially he's talking about tax cuts and tax breaks for his super rich friends. So that's what you're looking at this juncture, and you've not seen any movement which is towards working for fighting inequality. Because at the moment you need to actually increase taxes, and he's talking about reducing taxes. The problem of inequality, let's be clear, billionaires are a sign of policy failure. They're not a sign of success, and this is a political choice. And President Trump and presidents across the world need to recognize it. It's their responsibility to intervene in this political economy, which essentially lines the pocket of super rich. So it's about taking on the crisis of inequality.
And he has slapped tariffs left and right on different countries. How has that affected the global inequality?
At the moment, the story is unfolding, but it is fairly clear that the tariffs are not going to in any way dent the question of inequality. They're actually going to further accentuate it, because who's going to gain from it? It's essentially, again,
but
the
isn't
top
that in a free market going to lead more business towards those who have lower tariffs? Like, for example, the Philippines, maybe other countries will set up shop here because of the high tariffs in the United States.
But what is really important is to address the fundamentals of how the economy is set. Because even at this juncture, or even before tariffs, what you're essentially seeing is an economic system which favors the super rich. So as in, if you look at the top 10 largest corporations, 7 of them are either run or the principal shareholders are billionaires. What you essentially see is even the profits that these companies make go to the shareholders. They do not go to the workers. So the common person is not going to gain in either scenario. So the solution for fighting inequality is not about tariffs. It is about greater taxation of wealth. It is taxing the super rich. It is about ensuring that there are greater investments in public services like education, health, daycare, and these are drivers of an equal society.
The United States also stopped foreign aid.
Yeah.
How has that affected your work at Oxfam and also the work of a lot of NGOs around the world?
Sure, it's been. Oxfam does not take money from the US government. So our exposure to the US aid resources was very, very limited. But I must say that it's been dramatic. The US aid stop work order meant that there are people who were getting water, getting food. The next day they were not going to get it. So it's been devastating across the world, particularly in societies where there are very few resources. And the whole NGO world needs to reboot itself and work with much lesser resources.
Do you agree that the NGO world has been reliant on U.S. foreign aid?
U.S. foreign aid, but let's also recognize that the U.S. aid shifting its resources and President Trump's policy of asking other countries to invest more in military expenditure has meant that many other countries like UK has clearly announced that they would now reduce their foreign aid by $2 billion. So what you're seeing is reduction of aid across.
A ripple effect of
a ripple effect. And so it's going to be a massive reduction.
But the question is, what is the solution? I mean, we understand the problem. Inequality is growing all over the world, that's right. It's taking different forms in this day and age through debt, through even social media networks. It has its own set of billionaires up top. But what is the solution to this? I mean, from our standpoint, from an individual standpoint, from a local standpoint here in the Philippines, what can we do to help build those bridges?
Work with the politics of demanding equal societies, which starts with taxing the super rich. I think the fundamental point is that we need to get out of this TINA. There's no alternative to a neoliberal capitalist system, which is built on exploitation, expropriation of resources, which leads to the climate crisis, which leads essentially to some people becoming rich and richer, leading to oligarchies. I think that needs to change. So there has to be greater taxation. Fortunately, G20 has now recognized it. President Lula in Brazil worked with the G20 to now talk about taxing the super rich. So that's one way of looking at how we can address inequality. But the second is also just ensuring a living wage for every worker, and not just within the factory compound, but everybody in the supply chain. They must get a living wage. Third, invest in public services. As in, if you look at countries like Norway, Sweden, which are more equal societies, their investments in public services is extremely high, and that leads to an equal society. I would just repeat that there are solutions. It's about recognizing those solutions and working for those solutions. Instead of just celebrating billionaires, I think it's important for us to celebrate equality, to celebrate human dignity, to celebrate the hard work of billions of people.
How are talks on the climate crisis? The U.S., of course, led by Donald Trump, has denied the existence of such crisis. Are we set back many years over?
As in President Trump again coming in means massive challenges for the climate conversation. But even before he came in, I think there was a good conversation towards climate financing. However, it was stalled. So if you look at Baku, where we had the COP last year, the Global South countries were actually demanding not just now greater finances for the climate crisis, but the idea of reparations is coming in. And I think that's where we need to go. We need to recognize that the developing countries are the least contributors to this climate
with
crisis.
the U.S. stepping back from that conversation, there needs to be somebody to fill in the gap. Are there countries stepping up in the dialogue?
I would say
and
it's
taking
going
the
to
lead?
unfold in the next few
So
months.
we have yet to see.
We are yet to see as in what's going to happen, but I'm fairly convinced that in the longer run, at least in the next 5 to 10 years, governments will need to recognize the climate crisis. As in, I travel across the world, and I have now started literally seeing climate refugees. Earlier, I would not see climate refugees. I was in South Sudan, the border of Sudan and South Sudan, and I would meet people who are kind of escaping the conflict and coming to South Sudan. But I realized they were not just escaping the conflict, they were actually trying to escape floods and the climate catastrophe that they were facing, which was unprecedented for those communities. This is a global phenomena, and this is something that we'll need to address. As in sitting in Philippines, you are probably much better in understanding what climate catastrophe is. So this has to be one of the big issues of politics in the coming few years.
Where can we find the data for your research, for those who are interested in it?
Just look at the Oxfam website and you'll find lots of data, and I hope people join in to fight against inequality.
Well, thank you for starting the conversation here on Morning Matters. Let's
Thank you.
keep it going. We have Oxfam International Executive Director coming over to the Philippines to tell us about their work. We have Amitabh Behar. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Hall, your One News, all sides, all the time.